Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to talk about some of the Florida fishing regulations you should know about with a focus on the Florida Keys. You may be wondering why we're focusing on the Florida Keys. Well, there's a lot of different regulations in the Florida Keys that you don't see in the rest of the state. Also, the judges down there do not play around. And before we get into the video, I just want to say, always do your own research before going out. Regulations change. I'm not an attorney. I don't work for FWC. These are just my understanding of the regulations at the time of recording this video. Now, one of the most obvious places to do your research starts with the FWC website. When you're looking at the fish down there, make sure you're looking at the difference between the Gulf and the Atlantic, as regulations are prone to change. Now, on your phone, most officers recommend an app called Fish Rules. Fish Rules does not sponsor this video, but I do highly recommend the app. You can either use GPS or you can set a location manually and it's going to pull up the fish-specific regulations for that area. This can save a lot of hassle and it'll help ensure that you don't accidentally miss a regulation that may not be so obvious on the FWC website. Before you go out for the day, it's best to open the app to let it sync up, and that way if you lose cell coverage, you're still good. With that said, you want to make sure before you go out, you're checking other websites like NOAA to make sure you're not fishing in a marine sanctuary, which we'll talk a little bit about later. All right, so I think the obvious thing that you need to have is a fishing license. If you're fishing from shore and you're a state resident, it's free. Otherwise, you will have to pay. But you do need a saltwater license, especially if you're going to be in the Florida Keys. With that license, it's best to make sure you have the state reef angler endorsement, which is a free add-on. It's just letting the state know that you intend to target fish like snapper and grouper. Now, there are other permits down there that include shore-based shark fishing, snook, spiny lobster, tarpon tags, and crab registrations. All of these can be purchased at FWC's website or on their mobile app, as well as a lot of different bait stores in the area. Now, another permit that people tend to miss is the Atlantic Highly Migratory Species permit through NOAA. This is a permit for anglers who tend to target things such as swordfish, billfish, and specific tuna species. The permit is vessel specific, meaning you don't have to have one for each angler, and it costs $24. Another thing to note is the permit must be renewed annually. The permit also requires anglers to report swordfish, billfish, and tuna landings, as well as dead discards within 24 hours of returning from the trip. All right, now let's talk about measuring fish in the state of Florida. FWC uses check-it sticks, so personally that's what I use. They're very well made and they tend to be very accurate. Now personally, I do not keep fish if they're right on the edge of the limit, whether it's a slot limit or a minimum size. I like to give myself at least ½ inch of wiggle room. Now before you head out, if you plan on using one of the folding rulers or even a cooler lid, make sure that it's accurate and check it against a known accurate measuring device, especially cooler lids. As people sit on them, they tend to sag and that can alter your measurements. If you're short, you're short. You're probably going to get a ticket.
So how do we solve our problem here?
What problem?
What do we need to do?
About what?
Measuring from the cooler, what do we need to do?
Get a different ruler. I told him those check-it sticks that we use, the state uses, all FWC officers use that for measuring. Those are on Amazon for like $20, $25.
Now in the state of Florida, fish can be measured based on total length or fork length, and there could be a minimum size limit or a slot limit. Now in the state of Florida, total length is measured from the tip of a closed mouth to the end of the pinched tail. If you don't end up pinching the tail, you may end up inadvertently violating a regulation. Now for fork length, you're measuring from the tip of the closed mouth to the inward V part of the forked tail. Now these are commonly abbreviated on regulation websites as TL or FL. Now again, if it's very close to being out of regulation, I just throw the fish back. It's not worth it in my opinion. While measuring the size of the fish is important, it's also important to check that the fish is actually in season and open to harvest. This is of course based on the day of the year and where you're fishing that day. The things you need to make sure you're paying attention to is, are you on the Gulf or the Atlantic, and are you in state or federal waters? Now when you're down in the Florida Keys, you have to make sure you're identifying if you're in the Gulf or the Atlantic, and that line typically follows between the islands, but there are published maps. Now state versus federal is a little bit easier. The state waters on the Atlantic side extend out to 3 nautical miles, and on the Gulf side 9 nautical miles. Anything beyond that is considered federal waters, which extend out to about 200 miles in most places in the state, which is the EEZ line. The EEZ line is the exclusive economic zone, which basically marks US waters. All right, so marine sanctuaries. If one thing's going to inadvertently get you in trouble, it's going to be these.
You guys are from Tampa, you said?
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
What?
You're inside of Western Sambo's Ecological Reserve. You've ever heard of the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary?
There are 17 sanctuary preservation areas within the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. These are biologically important areas that help sustain marine species and habitats. Boating, diving, and snorkeling are generally allowed in these areas, but there are certain restrictions. Now in these areas, you cannot fish or harvest any marine life, and there are rules against touching or damaging the coral and restrictions on anchoring. In addition to the sanctuary preservation areas, you have to be on the lookout for ecological reserves and other managed areas. The regulations do vary depending on the type of zone, so it's usually best to avoid them when you can. Many of these zones are marked with yellow buoys, but you should not rely on the buoys alone. For example, the Tortugas Ecological Reserve is not marked by perimeter buoys. Now, in most modern day navigational systems, these zones are marked. However, sometimes you have to zoom in or out, and depending on the manufacturer, your map pack, and how recently you've updated your maps, they may not appear, so you always want to verify online before you head out. Now, NOAA does have an interactive map online that does make this a little bit easier, but it is important to recognize that the sanctuaries and the ecological reserves are not shown on the same maps. Now, as a general warning, if you pull up at a spot and you notice that there are no other vessels around and it looks like a great fishing area, you're probably in a restricted zone and you need to double check before you start to fish.
Usually that's a sign, is if we're at the beginning of lobster season and you look around and you don't see one commercial trap. Not one. Anywhere till the eye can see on the horizon, not one commercial trap, but when you dive down, it's loaded. That's a hint.
Okay, now if you're going to spearfish, there are even more restrictions. In Monroe County, spearfishing is prohibited from Long Key north to the Miami-Dade County line, including the Atlantic and Bayside waters. Spearfishing is also prohibited in Florida state parks, the Tortugas and Everglades National Park, and of course management areas including the sanctuaries, ecological reserves, and restoration areas. When you're spearfishing, you also need to be mindful of your distance from beaches, bridges, piers, and jetties. Spearfishing is not allowed within 300 feet or 100 yards of a public swimming beach, a commercial or public fishing pier, or a bridge where public fishing is allowed. For exposed jetties, the setback is 100 feet. Keep in mind there are several marine species such as lobster and snook that cannot be harvested by spear. So if you're ever spearfishing and you see a fish that you're not sure is legal to shoot because of the species or the size, it's best to not shoot it. Now, the spiny lobster in the Florida Keys is a very popular target. The regular spiny lobster season runs from August 6th through March 31st with a 6 per harvester bag limit. There is, however, a 2-day spiny lobster sports season on the last consecutive Wednesday and Thursday of July. During the sports season, there is a 6 per harvester bag limit in Monroe County in the Biscayne National Park. Throughout the rest of the state, the limit's 12 per person. Now, it's important to note that during the sports season, the on-the-water possession limit is the daily bag limit. So if you're down in the Florida Keys, you're only allowed to have 6 on you at any given time when you're on the water. You cannot accumulate a 2-day bag limit by simply staying on the vessel. Now, in the state of Florida, to keep a lobster, it must have a carapace length greater than 3 inches. Keep in mind the regulation states greater than 3 inches and not exactly 3 inches. Now, typically what officers will do is they'll measure with their 3-inch gauge between the eyes, and if the measuring device falls off the back of the carapace, the lobster is considered short. Now, keep in mind the measuring device must be on your possession at all times when you're in the act of harvesting lobster. It cannot simply be kept in the boat. The lobsters must be measured while you are still in the water and before they go into the bag. A few other things to keep in mind is lobster must be landed in whole condition. You cannot remove the tail in the water. You also cannot use a spear, gig, or any other device that's going to puncture, penetrate, or crush the shell of the lobster. Recreational harvesters cannot trap lobster, and it should go without say, but you cannot steal from commercial lobster traps.
Maybe out of that trap right there?
I pulled 2 or 4 out that were little.
Also, if the lobster is egg-bearing, it must be released immediately. Now again, like the measuring device, be careful with cheap lobster gauges. If you're going to be using a plastic gauge, it's best to verify it against a known accurate ruler or a caliper. We have featured many videos where the plastic gauges inadvertently cause somebody to be in the violation of the regulations. Again, similar to measuring fish, when you're measuring a lobster, it's best to give yourself some wiggle room. It doesn't have to be a lot of wiggle room, but giving yourself even 1/8 of an inch can help ensure that you're keeping yourself within regulation. Now, a little bit about snapper and grouper aggregate limits. Most snapper and grouper count towards the daily aggregate bag limit. For snapper, the daily aggregate limit is 10 per person, and on the Gulf side, 4 grouper per person and 3 on the Atlantic. Now, it's very important to stress that Monroe County uses a 3 aggregate bag limit for grouper even on the Gulf side. Now, what is the aggregate limit? Well, essentially, different snapper can count towards the 10-day bag limit. Now, it is important to note that not every snapper counts towards this, such as the vermilion snapper, so always verify while you're out. Now, the aggregate bag limit represents the total amount of the variety of snapper that count towards it that you're allowed to have in one day. With that said, each snapper species has a daily bag limit within that aggregate limit. For instance, mangrove snapper. They have a 5 per person daily bag limit in state waters, but still count towards that 10 per person daily aggregate limit. Now, let's say you catch a total of 10 snapper, none of which include the vermilion snapper, you've hit your daily aggregate limit. However, vermilion snapper do not count towards that aggregate limit, so you can have 10 other snapper plus your daily bag limit of vermilion. Now, for those of you planning to deep drop for tilefish, just remember that based on where you're fishing, they may count towards your grouper aggregate limit. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the gear requirements. In much of our waters, it is a requirement that if you're targeting reef fish with natural bait, you use a non-stainless steel, non-offset circle hook. The main exception to that rule is the state waters south of the 28° north latitude line, where J-hooks are allowed as long as they're non-stainless steel. With that said, circle hooks still produce great results and they help protect the marine life. Now, the two other things that tend to trip people up is having a dehooking device as well as a descending or ventilation tool rigged and ready to go. Now, as far as the descending device goes, there is a website that can help you out with that. ReturnEmRight.org has a free 15-minute training class that shows you the best practices. At the completion of the training, anglers can receive a discount link to obtain $100 worth of release gear at the cost of shipping and handling, which is about $12. We're going to have a link to their website down below, so be sure to check them out. Now, in the state of Florida, it's important to remember that many species are required to be caught with a single hook and line. Each fish has its own regulations, but it's important to check because several fish cannot be cast netted and they cannot be intentionally snagged. Alright, so let's talk about the requirements for handling fish. Now, unless you're in pursuit of a state or world record tarpon and have the appropriate tags, any tarpon with a fork length over 40 inches must remain in the water. Now, it's important to help the fish survive by keeping the gills in the water and minimizing upward stress on the body of the fish. Similarly, large Goliath grouper must be kept in the water at all times as well. However, FWC does not define what a large Goliath grouper actually is, so it's a best practice to just leave it in the water. Now, it is important to note that you're required to release the fish immediately, meaning photographs can be taken, but they should not delay the release of the fish. Now, some other tips that could help keep you out of trouble. In the state of Florida, most regulated species must be returned to the dock in whole condition. Unless you're certain that you can legally do so, you should not fillet and release a fish out on open water. Despite the misinformation floating around on the internet, Florida state law specifically gives FWC officers the authority to inspect places where fish are stored when statutory standards are met. And on a vessel, an officer with probable cause to believe the vessel was used for fishing may inspect coolers, fish boxes, bait wells, and similar areas where saltwater products are normally kept.
You guys hiding fish in there, man.
Failure to present your catch to an FWC officer upon their request can lead to a criminal charge. Another easy thing to do to stay out of trouble is make sure your vessel's registration or U.S. Coast Guard certificate of documentation is up to date. In most cases, officers are going to be checking for life jackets, throwable devices, flares, and a fire extinguisher. Fire extinguisher requirements vary by the size of the vessel and also the fuel tank, so make sure you're looking at that before you head out. Another thing to note is many shark species are prohibited from harvest. According to FWC, a prohibited species should remain in the water with its gills fully submerged. Prohibited species of sharks cannot be brought aboard a vessel, pier, bridge, or anywhere on land beyond the regular surf zone. Alright, so with all of that said, planning ahead can make a big difference. Before starting your trip, make sure you get an idea of where you want to fish and make sure that you can legally fish there. You also want to consider what kind of fish you plan to target and look at the different regulations for those specific fish. Some of the boat ramps down in the Florida Keys are pretty shallow, so make sure that it's a good fit for a vessel of your size. Also, be sure you're flexible and respect Florida's weather. The last time I made a trip to the Florida Keys, a Category 1 hurricane showed up and decided to stall out right over the Keys. This meant that on an 8-night trip, we got about 4 hours of fishing on the boat. Instead, we decided to fish on or around bridges anytime the weather was reasonable. On that trip, we still had a lot of fun. We kept mangrove snapper, we caught mutton snapper, we caught some smaller tarpon, and we made it home safely. So that's it for today's video. Keep in mind that this video is not all encompassing. There are other regulations that are in effect that are outside of this. If you plan on targeting any kind of crab or shellfish, make sure you're looking into those regulations. And make sure you check out FWC's website as well as the Fish Rules app. We'll have them both linked down below, and we appreciate you watching. Have a good day.